Dedicated to making money, Ms. Li, times black-hearted rebirth and internal convolution brother Li Shu is the first brave entrepreneur in the 21st century and a diligent supermarket owner. One day, she suddenly realized that her supermarket could allow her to travel to the cultivation world. Heavenly wealth and earthly treasures, rare and exotic herbs. It's better not to do it now than when. So Li Shu rolled up his sleeves and started working. So she carried her backpack and began to shuttle between the two sessions. Cultivation realm, you're all worthless things. Li Shu was overjoyed and said, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Then I'll have more. She likes things that are not worth anything. Everyone. She's crazy. Shallow eyelids. Li Shu smiled silently and turned back to the modern world, saying, peerless elixir, hair growth and beauty enhancement, first come, first served. On the internet, various voices of disdain followed. Peerless elixir. Have you read too many novels? Overtime drives me crazy again. Everyone is shedding their hair, not their brains. Later. Damn it, master. How much money can you make by opening a supermarket? You've been running a supermarket since college, so it's embarrassing. Li Shu smiled politely. If you don't make money, it's only a few billion points. How much do you earn? If you don't give flowers to your parents, brothers, and sisters, who will we give flowers to? We are a family. Li Shu smiled mysteriously and said, I can take care of my little white face. A little white face smiled lightly and said, okay, you take care of me. Later, Li Shu learned the truth. Where's the agreed little white face? I want to return it. 7 days have passed, and there is a reason why we cannot return the goods. Keywords of the novel. After my home supermarket connected to the immortal world, I made a crazy profit without a pop-up window. After my home supermarket connected to the immortal world, I made a crazy profit. Download the complete text. After my home supermarket connected to the immortal world, I made a crazy profit. Read the latest chapter. Chapter 1. Research on purchasing in Lingzhong Wonderland. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 2. Emerging huge business opportunities. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 3. Feixianya. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Feixianya dared to bite her again. The little pervert lifted his head from the soil, his eyes sunken, with a circle of blue and black, and stared at Li Shu like a little ghost. It's strange. This is the first time he has met a woman who has no spiritual power but can appear and disappear from time to time. Interesting. The little pervert squinted his eyes, revealing his pale teeth like crescent moon. Sister, I'm so hungry. Hungry, that's why you're gnawing on me. Li Shu looked at the tooth marks on his arm in the wind. Fortunately, this guy didn't bite through. Otherwise, she will have to go get vaccinated against dogs. The little pervert only looked up and pretended pitifully, Sister, I will starve to death. A broken child like you can starve to death. For society, it can also be considered as a lack of harm. A hint of injury flashed in the little pervert's eyes. I'm not a child, I'm 16. After speaking, the little pervert thought carefully and realized that he was 16. It seems so. Li Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at this 16-year-old pervert in surprise. Short hands and feet, looking only 11 or 12 years old. You're not joking, are you? You don't have the appearance of 16. Malnutrition. The little pervert shook his head and said, no. Li Shu looked at him with pity and said, then you are really pitiful. It seems that I haven't had a good life since I was young. The little pervert is looking forward to Li Shu's next sentence. But I haven't heard an answer for a long time. What does it mean? Just surface sympathy. Sister. Stop it, don't be too long or too short, and I don't owe you anything. I don't have anything to eat, and you don't want to eat me either. You know, like you, a weak chicken with small arms and legs, I can hit 8 with just one punch. She doesn't eat this kind of thing. After the little pervert's eyes rolled around, a pair of claws began to search for something in the soil. After a moment, he grabbed a handful of dead branches and loess and stuffed them into his stomach. He is very hungry. Very hungry. Li Shu was dumbfounded as he read. You really eat dirt. So ruthless. He stuffed a handful into his mouth and struggled to swallow it, then grabbed another and stuffed it into his mouth. In no time, his mouth was covered in blood. Blood mixed with soil is swallowed into the stomach, painful yet full. The self-harming way of being full made Li Shu frown, speechless and disgusted. Okay, don't act anymore. Li Shu reluctantly transformed a bag of things and threw it onto his head. She just casually brought it in, it's really a bargain for him. The little pervert was hit all over his head but didn't get angry, smiling at Li Shu with dirt in his mouth. Li Shu carried a kitchen knife and said, your performance fee is very exciting. The little pervert didn't reply, just as if he couldn't understand her. He looked sarcastically and spat out the sand in his mouth before starting to search in the bag. This bag is very strange, he has never seen it before, and the things inside are also very strange. He picked up a bottle with a round, long, colorful and strange pattern, and shook it. There was water inside. There is also a round and transparent box covered with a layer of transparent material, which contains food and rice inside. There is still a lot more, he has never seen it before. It doesn't matter whether he has seen it or not, what's important is that it can be eaten. His paws anxiously pounded the box for a while, but he couldn't open it. I'll give you some food, you have to answer my question. Li Shu saw this and snatched the boxed lunch over, lifted the lid and handed it to him. Is that okay? The little pervert stared at the delicious food in Li Shu's hand and nodded. He is really starving to death. Okay. Li Shu let go. The little pervert threw the box gun over and regardless of the situation, he grabbed it with his hands and fed it into his mouth. Li Shu sat on the ground, watching him wolf spit and swallow without any sympathy. Are you still far from here in the spirit you mentioned? The little pervert shook his head and muttered, that's right ahead. Li Shu followed the little pervert's gaze and saw a dark shadow of a forest rising behind the yellow sand. After the shadow, a solitary cliff rose, and the sunlight projected onto it, like a golden wall. Where is it? Feixianya. Feixianya. Feixianya, also known as the entry. Level. Feixianya is like a mirage, appearing once in 100 years. The golden light lasts for 3 days, and after 3 days, Feixianya will disappear. If it reappears, it will be another 100 years. Upon hearing this, I looked over from afar and felt intimidated. What about Feixianya? Feixianya is the easiest way to enter the spiritual realm. Wait, you've been talking about the spiritual realm. What exactly is this place in the spiritual realm? Donghai Lingzhong is the leader of various immortal sections. Legend has it that Lingzhong is located in a remote area of the East China Sea, with a graceful and spectacular 100,000 immortal mountains. Immortals hold swords and reside on the sea, once every century. The immortal gate opens wide, gathering people from all over the world seeking immortality. Oh. Li Shu understood. It's her purchasing agent. At night, in the forest not far from Feixianya, flames were about to ignite the entire forest. Li Shu felt that if there were beer and drinks for a small barbecue at this time, he would definitely make a lot of money. These people are all heading to Feixianya. As she walked along, she saw men, women of all ages, pregnant women, cripples, blind people, farmers, scholars, soldiers. Regardless of their status or age. This is different from what she imagined. She always thought that cultivating immortality should start from a young age, and these famous sects only accept children. I only realized at first sight today that seeking immortality does not ask about one's identity or age, but only depends on whether you have a divine connection. Power, gold and silver cannot be exchanged for a path to heaven, nor can pens, ink, paper, and inkstones write the book of worship to immortals. Li Shu picked up some branches and dried leaves, piled them together, and quietly took out a lighter to quickly light them in the darkness before putting them away. After finishing, she still felt guilty and looked around to see if anyone was paying attention to her. Unfortunately, she overthought and the people around her either fell asleep or discussed with others, without anyone paying attention to her. The sky was dry and the firewood was dry, and in just a moment the pile of firewood ignited. Under the glow of the fire, Li Shu picked up a piece of firewood and started reading. This tree is like a pine tree in her time and space, with a cracked outer skin. With just a slight click, the cloud-like skin falls into her palm. However, the pine trees in her world are mostly reddish-brown and black-brown, while those in his palm are silver-gray. She leaned in and sniffed, not the scent of pine wood. There was a faint, not unpleasant smell that she couldn't describe. At this moment, the little pervert returned. He held a bundle of firewood and threw it next to Li Shu before sitting down. Li Shu handed him a branch and asked, "What tree is this?" The little pervert glanced at her and didn't understand what she was holding. He casually said, "Silver mist pine is very common in spirits." Silver mist pine. Li Shu repeated it and asked deeply, "Is it useful?" The little pervert thought for a moment and replied, "Its greatest function may be pine oil." Turpentine. She knew this. Pine trees all have pine oil. When she was a child, she lived with her grandfather in the countryside. His grandfather would take her to the mountains and forests to find pine oil to sell, which is said to be a medicinal herb. It can reduce swelling, relieve pain, and is used for antibacterial and anti-inflammatory purposes. Revise the text, end of this chapter. Chapter 4. Quiet down and take a look. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Quiet down and take a look. The little pervert raised his hand slightly, and the flames fell brightly on his face. The pine oil of silver mist pine is condensed in the morning, transparent and crystalline, known as silver mist crystal. Silver mist crystal can relieve pain. Silver mist crystal, formed from pine wood over 100 years old, is an essential material for refining pain-relieving pills. As for those under 100 years, they are useless. Pain-relieving pill. Li Shu was overjoyed in his heart. Isn't this the pill they wanted? Is it expensive? She asked immediately. The pain-relieving pill is the cheapest pill, and every beginner in alchemy must take it as a gift. The little pervert looked at Li Shu with a faint gaze. Nowadays, the main focus of the cultivation world is swordsmanship, and all sword cultivation requires physical training. They wouldn't take pride in taking painkillers. Gift. Li Shu suppressed his excitement and threw the branch in his hand into the fire. The pain-relieving pill is a gift in the cultivation world, not worth any money, but it is completely different in their world. The next day, before dawn, Li Shu was awakened. The fire had lost its temperature, but there seemed to be a ball of fire on her shoulder. Li Shu looked towards her shoulder, and the little pervert was looking on his shoulder. Li Shu pushed him away with just one push. Their relationship is not so good that they pillow each other's shoulders. Let's go. She looked around and saw that the bonfires were all extinguished, and the people were almost gone, and they should also leave now. The light on the Feixianya, Li Shu had always thought it was sunlight shining on it, but when she reached her feet, she realized that the mountain wall was self-illuminating. She stood under the cliff and looked up, with a slope of about 90 degrees. What does this? The Immortal sect in the spirit mean? Didn't it let us climb up? How can we climb? The cliff doesn't have any trees or floor mats, didn't we accidentally fall and die? Upon hearing this, Li Shu took a few steps back. Since he couldn't climb, it meant he wasn't climbing. She kept retreating until she could see the entire golden wall before stopping. The most obvious pattern on the cliff is the mountain body, with crisscrossing patterns that surround the entire golden wall. Li Shu instinctively picked up a branch and painted the mountain patterns on the ground, but she didn't know if it was a cultural difference. No matter how she painted, she couldn't see the pattern, but instead, the more she painted, the more chaotic it became. Well, it doesn't seem like this solution. She looked at the gold wall again and saw that some people had started to climb up. They were smart and climbed up with human nets in the same way. Li Shu glanced at the height. It was impossible. No one can climb up. The golden wall is too slippery. About 20.30 meters is still acceptable, but this golden wall is at least a few hundred meters long. When it is interrupted, someone will lose their strength and collapse. But she didn't speak up to stop it either. She's not a meddler. Turning around, the little pervert sat cross-legged on a stone, looking up at the golden wall. Li Shu walked over and looked at the golden wall with him, asking, "Do you have any ideas?" Little pervert. Here's a hint for you. Li Shu. What? The little pervert stood up and jumped off the stone, walking towards the golden wall. But Li Shu heard the answer. Quiet down and take a look. What? Li Shu is unclear about its meaning. The petite figure of the little pervert ran towards the stone wall like a wandering dragon among the crowd. Everyone instinctively gave way. The little pervert approached the golden wall without hesitation and raised his hand to touch it. The originally cold golden wall was now as soft as the water surface, and an ancient and gentle force at the end of the water surface pulled him in bit by bit. Everyone watched as the little pervert Jinbi sucked in and quickly went to touch the stone wall. But they felt only a cold sensation. How did he get in? He found a way in. What the hell is this damn method? Entering one, the people around became even more impatient. Li Shu stopped in place. Quiet down and take a look. She turned her head and climbed up to the position before the little pervert, staring cross-legged at the golden wall like him. Reciting silently over and over again. Calm down. Calm down. I don't know how long it has been. Li Shu patiently waited and sat here, but she couldn't help but calm down. The orange sunset falls to the horizon, and the clouds are as brilliant as the golden wall, but a bit more gentle than the icy and cold golden wall. The setting sun shone brightly on the golden wall, and suddenly, the noise in my ears faded and replaced it with the crisp and pleasant chirping of birds. In this moment of change, Li Shu seemed to be outside the crowd. Looking towards the golden wall again, it suddenly changed. One by one, golden spirit birds struggled to fly out of the wall, circling around it with golden light. Jio. The number of spiritual birds increased, and they began to envelop Li Shu as well. The golden radiance of the sky fell on Li Shu, like a gentle rain, extremely comfortable. The spirit bird raised its head and let out a long howl, passing through her body behind her and flying towards the golden wall. The spirit bird slowly pulled into the wall like a little pervert. It seems to be telling her what to do. Li Shu finally understood what the little pervert had said and settled down to take a look. Only with a calm mind can one enter the country. The spirit bird pulled Li Shu towards the golden wall, and when her fingertips touched it, it was soft and soft. She reached her hand in, and something seemed to be pecking at her hand at the end of the golden wall. There was some pain, and as soon as she moved, it retreated. Suddenly, a huge force pulled her in. Ah! Li Shu exclaimed in surprise and landed on a pile of plush fluff, surrounded by the deafening wind that made her unable to open her eyes. Even with her eyes closed, she could feel the sound of wings fluttering beneath her feet. It seems like a bird, flying with her. Li Shu adapted for a while, and slowly opened her eyes. Countless golden birds surrounded her, and her gaze fell down on the huge back of the bird's head. The color of the big bird is like sunset, with a long and gorgeous feather at the back of its head, while the gradual sunset is mixed with strands of golden color. The gorgeous feathers slapped her face in the wind. Li Shu looked at the towering sky and knelt behind the bird, tightly hugging its neck. "Big brother, take it slow," he said. The big bird glanced slightly sideways, then flipped over suddenly and spiraled down. "Ah, ah, ah." Screams echoed through the sky. Li Shu has never done a roller coaster or a jumping machine in his life. I experienced it today. This bird not only spirals and descends, but also performs various difficult acrobatics in the air, sometimes upward, sometimes sideways, sometimes diving into the sea, forming an arc from the sea and rushing out of the sea. Finally, Li Shu couldn't hold on any longer. The water washed away the feathers she was holding, and she watched as the beautiful bird soared into the sky while she threw herself towards the water. The feeling of weightlessness caused her to stop breathing. At this moment, she was caught again, and another blue-feathered bird of the same design and different colors took her out of the clouds, reaching an unprecedented height. She saw the colorful flying birds above the clouds, like a magpie bridge. At the end of the magpie bridge was a palace like a fairyland in Penglai. Behind the palace lies a vast expanse of green mountains shrouded in golden light. This is the Lingzhong sword mansion in the East China Sea. She took a quick glance, and the blue feather bird began a spiral descent again. This blue feather bird was even rougher than the Xia feather bird, completely disregarding her life and death. She suspected that Xia Yu was a sister just now, and Qin Yu was a wild uncle. Modify. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. If the East China Sea is empty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. If the East China Sea is empty. Once again caught by Xiaoyu, Xiaoyu led her out of the clouds again. This time, Li Shu finally felt something. These two birds seemed to torture her while giving her guidance. She looked at the magpie bridge from afar, wondering if she needed to jump onto the feathered bird that was building the bridge when they sent her up to the clouds. Thinking of this, Li Shu couldn't help but take a cold breath. But she couldn't think of any other possibilities. Xiaoyu began to descend again, and Li Shu took a deep look at the magpie bridge and made up his mind. When interrupted, one will inevitably suffer chaos. Give it a try. Once again, being carried up to the clouds by Qinyu, Li Shu didn't hesitate to let go as Qinyu flipped down. The force of Qinyu's flipping threw her out. The scene before Li Shu began to turn upside down, and in the end, she felt herself starting to fall. But she is still some distance away from that magpie bridge. Did she guess wrong? Li Shu fell along the clouds, which covered her eyes. She wanted to reach out and grab it, but only caught a handful of mist, while she kept falling. Jiu. At this moment, Li Shu watched as Xiaoyu rushed towards her. She was once again caught by Xiaoyu. Li Shu was overjoyed and guessed correctly. Thank you, Sister Xiaoyu. Jiu. Xiaoyu looked up and called out, as if responding to her. Before Li Shu could reply, Xiaoyu once again led her up to the clouds. This time, Li Shu's gaze became even more firm. He jumped up and was thrown out and down, finally caught by Qinyu, took off again, and was thrown out again, repeating a parabolic pattern as he approached the magpie bridge. Every time, Li Shu's gaze became more determined than before. For some reason, she always felt that if she had any hesitation, she would not be able to reach the magpie bridge. Under her feet, Qingxia Eryu worked harder than she did and wanted her to step onto the magpie bridge. Finally, Qinyu let out a long howl from the sky, and finally threw her out with all his might. This time, Li Shu arrived. She landed in the sky above the magpie bridge. Upon seeing this, Qingxia Eryu began to dance around the magpie bridge, seeming afraid that she might not have landed on the bird's back. Li Shu looked at the big bird flying under her feet, seized the opportunity, and took advantage of the moment when it landed. She grabbed the wings of a big bird with both hands. The big bird seemed to be startled and began to riot. Li Shu tightly grabbed its wings and was carried away by the big bird in a suspended position. Jiu. Qingxia Eriu flew anxiously, as if urging and worrying about her. Li Shu breathed heavily and her heart was about to jump out. The big bird flew high from time to time, and she took this opportunity to let go and hold the arm of the bird below. She tightly locked her arms around its neck and lifted one leg to hang it on its back, but its fur was too smooth. Having failed several times, Li Shu felt a bit powerless. Finally, her hand slipped. This time she let herself fall down because she saw that as she let go, Qingxia turned her head and flew towards her. Qingyu caught her. Qingyu once again led her to water, and in the salty seawater, Li Shu swallowed her belly without hesitation. Returning to Xiaoyu's back again, Li Shu patted her back and said, "Sister Xiaoyu, come again." She doesn't believe it. She can't go up yet. Jiu. Xiaoyu once again soared into the clouds, and Qingxia relayed through her towards the Magpie Bridge. With experience, Li Shu placed his target directly on the neck of the big bird. She had just been suspended and had expended too much energy. If she had grabbed her neck the first time, she would definitely have been able to go up. Don't worry. In the air, she took a deep breath of air wrapped in her mouth, tried to maintain a downward position, and opened her arms to fall freely. The birds of the Magpie Bridge fly straight ahead, and apart from being frightened and starting to riot, they will not change their direction of travel. As long as they get on the bird's back and hold their neck, they can pass by. Li Shu's eyes blinked as she got closer and closer to the bird, which flew under her. And she saw the largest bird. That's it. Li Shu measured the distance, found the right moment, and suddenly exhaled the air in her mouth. At the same time, her legs curled up, and just as the bird appeared under her, Li Shu was also in place. There was a slight deviation in the distance. She pounced a few times and the big bird passed by her face. Li Shu raised his hand and went to hug its neck, but she failed again. Its neck was too big for her to hold. Li Shu was anxious and grabbed the big bird's feathers with both hands. The next second, the big bird began to riot. Li Shu tugged at its feathers with her hands, feet, and mouth, drilling into its feathers. With the help of the feathers, she climbed up by stepping on its roots. Finally, Li Shu's upper body climbed onto its back, and it also began to calm its emotions. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Li Shu climbed onto its back with all his might and trapped himself in its wide feathers. She feels like a flea to herself now. Feathers stuck on her, but she couldn't accept it anymore. The wind was blowing heavily, and from time to time, it also caught Li Shu's waist and abdomen, causing her to howl in pain. Magpie Bridge walked forward and soon, the big bird flew to the palace scene between Li Shu. Li Shu felt that the speed of the big bird had slowed down. She looked up and saw that the palace was within reach. She saw the magnificent and majestic gate. In front of the gate, two majestic long-tailed feathered birds surround a huge transparent pearl filled with silver starlight. The four characters in the pearl. Li Shu frowned. She doesn't recognize words. At this point a ding in her mind. Trigger automatic translation mode. Li Shu. 6. The supermarket noticed that she couldn't read, so they set up a translation mode for her overnight. At this moment, as she looked at the silver ball, the strange and unfamiliar words made her recognize it. Lingzhong Immortal Sect. The Lingzhong Immortal Sect is truly the largest sect in the East. The solemn and immortal hall stands tall in the East China Sea, and the 100,000 immortal mountains behind the palace are even more magnificent. Green mountains in dusk mist, a fairyland on the sea. The flying bird slowly descended carrying Li Shu, bending its legs obediently when it touched the ground with its long feet. Where else is the anger just now? Li Shu suspected that it was playing her just now. Congratulations to this junior sister, the 18th person to step over the bridge of sending off immortals. Li Shu crawled out of the feathers of the flying bird, and his high and tangled hair had now spread out, looking like a crazy woman. Her first words came out, crying and complaining, "You guys are too scary. It's too scary. Whose new disciple is playing like this? Send off the Immortal Bridge and the Broken Soul Bridge." Pushi. With this statement in her image, everyone couldn't help but laugh out loud. The man waved his hand, and Li Shu felt a cool force enveloping her as she moved from the bird's body to the ground. The force released and she fell to the ground with her legs limping. Jiu. Two bird songs came from afar. Qingyu, Xiaoyu. Li Shu quickly turned his head, and the green glow rushing towards her from afar turned into a stream of light and flew towards her. It intertwined before her eyes, and after a moment, it transformed into a small object that was indistinguishable from the gate and landed in her palm. Unlike the gate, the small object in her hand is the color of Qingxia, with 2 lines of words written in the middle glass ball. Lingzhong Immortal Sect, Li Shu. This is Gaga Meng Modified. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Chongming Immortal Feather. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Chongming Immortal Feather. Magpie Bridge walked forward and soon, the big bird flew to the palace scene between Li Shu. Li Shu felt that the speed of the big bird had slowed down. She looked up and saw that the palace was within reach. She saw the magnificent and majestic gate. In front of the gate, 2 majestic long-tailed feathered birds surround a huge transparent pearl filled with silver starlight. The 4 characters in the pearl. Li Shu frowned. She doesn't recognize words. At this point a ding in her mind. Trigger automatic translation mode. Li Shu. 6. The supermarket noticed that she couldn't read, so they set up a translation mode for her overnight. At this moment, as she looked at the silver ball, the strange and unfamiliar words made her recognize it. Lingzhong Immortal Sect. The Lingzhong Immortal Sect is truly the largest sect in the East. The solemn and immortal hall stands tall in the East China Sea, and the 100,000 immortal mountains behind the palace are even more magnificent. Green mountains and dusk mist, a fairyland on the sea. The flying bird slowly descended carrying Li Shu, bending its legs obediently when it touched the ground with its long feet. Where else is the anger just now? Li Shu suspected that it was playing her just now. Congratulations to this junior sister, the 18th person to step over the bridge of sending off immortals. Li Shu crawled out of the feathers of the flying bird, and his high and tangled hair had now spread out, looking like a crazy woman. Her first words came out, crying and complaining, "You guys are too scary. It's too scary. Whose new disciple is playing like this? Send off the Immortal Bridge and the Broken Soul Bridge." Pushi. With this statement in her image, everyone couldn't help but laugh out loud. The man waved his hand, and Li Shu felt a cool force enveloping her as she moved from the bird's body to the ground. The force released and she fell to the ground with her legs limping. Jiu. 2 bird songs came from afar. Qingyu, Xiaoyu. Li Shu quickly turned his head, and the green glow rushing towards her from afar turned into a stream of light and flew towards her. It intertwined before her eyes, and after a moment, it transformed into a small object that was indistinguishable from the gate and landed in her palm. Unlike the gate, the small object in her hand is the color of Qingxia, with 2 lines of words written in the middle glass ball. Lingzhong Immortal Sect, Li Shu. This is. Where is her bird? Where are the 2 birds that are so big? This is your double feather order. The 2 feathers that helped you before were your divine consciousness that transformed into a spirit. When your divine consciousness was connected to the shadow wall, it transformed into the form of my spirit's immortal beast. Chongming Xianyu, guiding you here. As long as you are still disciples in the spirit, Chongming will be with you for a day. The man looked down at Li Shu and the Shuang Yuling in her palm, raised his hand, and a stream of light flew from his fingertips towards the Shuang Yuling in Li Shu's palm, transforming into tassels and strung them together. This is issued by the Sword Sect. Junior sisterly, you don't need to be polite. Senior brother, please add one more sentence. I'm afraid Li Shu might misunderstand something. I don't know what I've experienced. Li Shu struggled to get up from the ground and carefully held the Shuang Yuling in his hand, saying, "Thank you very much, senior brother. The school is really generous. Get birds and tassels for beginners." The senior brother smiled and said, "Go, stand next to junior brother Fu." Okay, Li Shu walked in the direction of his finger. What he said about Master Fu is actually a little pervert. Li Shu stood beside him, unable to resist looking at the Shuangyuling on his waist. His double-feathered ring is a heavy tone of black and white. Lingzhong Immortal Sect, Fu Shiwei. So his name is Fu Shiwei. The human heart is only in danger, and the Tao's heart is only small. Danger is safe, but a little is hard to understand. Therefore, those who recognize danger/insignificance are both physically safe and mentally clear. It's a good name that gives expectations. She glanced again at the 17 people before him, except for Fu Shiwei, who were 6 women and 10 men. Age and identity vary. She quickly glanced back and remembered her purpose. The supermarket asked her to conduct research. What should she research? Is there a shortage of research in this world? But what can this world lack? She actually feels that her world is lacking. I don't know how long I waited, but it was already dark and no one came over from the Magpie Bridge. The senior brother looked at the time and whispered a few words to the disciples next to him, and those disciples walked towards them. It's already late, junior sisters and brothers, please come with us to our residence to rest first. Yes. So, Li Shu once again rode on to Xiaoyu. The senior brother led them to one of the 100,000 immortal mountains, where the trees were lush. The disciples' courtyard was small and exquisite, with night pearls as streetlights in the untrimmed flowers at their feet. Li Shu walked through the crowd and exclaimed that it was a waste. It's too mote to use such a big night pearl as a street lamp. She wants to steal one. Each person had a small courtyard, and Li Shu was assigned to a small courtyard called Feng Ting. As soon as you enter, you will find a courtyard in all directions. The flower blossom tribe walked a few steps through the garden and arrived at the porch. By the window is a fish pond swimming with small fish. Pushing the door and entering, what jumped into my eyes was the big character on the wall. Quiet. Ming. Think. 3 characters. On the left side of the room, there is a bed facing the window. Under the window, there is a long carved small table, and outside the window is a fish pond. On the right hand is the study, where there are bookshelves and desks. The bookshelves are full of books. The senior sister who gave her the bottle handed her a white porcelain bottle, which was the size of a palm, with the thumb and index finger open high, and the neck about 2 to 3 centimeters in size. The bottle mouth was blocked with a wooden stopper. This is an analgesic pill, you can use it tomorrow. Senior sister left with an unpredictable smile. At this point, Li Shu was still somewhat unclear. Her thoughts were all on the painkillers. She lifted the stopper, flipped the bottle, and poured out the pills inside. The round pills were clear white, the size of a nail cap, and there were 20 pills in each bottle. She lowered her head and smelled a faint scent of grass and wood. She remembers that ancient pills would contain cinnabar. But the cultivation world should not have. Right. She didn't know about these, so she had to give them a try. She took out a pill and found a branch from the yard to insert it into the pill. She sat at her desk and then took out a lighter to burn the pill. Underneath was a pure white paper. The flames rose straight up, opening the huge mouth of the abyss to bite the pill. In just a moment, the surface of the pill began to burn. Li Shu released the lighter and held the pill in front of him. As the pill burned, white smoke appeared, carrying a pleasant scent of grass and wood. Like pine trees, fireworks, morning dew. Li Shu sniffed and his comfortable limbs began to stretch out. The pill quickly burned out, and the fire landed on the branches. But all the pills turned into cigarettes and slowly flowed in the room. And there is no impurity on the white paper. There is no cinnabar. Even the entire pill is a combustible substance of plants and trees. New item on the purchase order. Pain-relieving pill. The sudden news brought great joy to Li Shu's heart. She extinguished the branch and looked at the bottle in her hand. I used to need to trigger it. She tucked the painkillers into the red marks on her wrist. Virtual space loading. Pain-relieving pill X19. Effect. Pain relief, anti-inflammatory. Price. 2000 soft sister coins / 1 pearl and 5 cents bright moon. Please list 500 painkillers within 10 days. What? What are you talking about? 500 painkillers available within 10 days. The supermarket is going crazy. When she woke up again, she was awakened by the wailing outside. She was about to wake up and take a look, but just as she moved slightly, she couldn't help but scream out with pain in her waist. Ah! This is sour and refreshing. Li Shu was hanging by the bed, like a salted fish with no distinction. She forgot that her exercise volume skyrocketed yesterday, and her muscles all over her finally began to resist today. She finally understood what the senior sister meant yesterday. Who still remembers the sour feeling the next day after every heavy exercise? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. You dare to punish me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. You dare to punish me. Li Shu took out a painkiller pill from the red mark and fed it into his mouth. Virtual space listing. Pain-relieving pill X18. The pill melts at the entrance with a hint of bitterness, but it tastes much better than traditional Chinese medicine pills. A refreshing sensation enters the stomach, like spring rain falling on a clear spring, causing countless circular ripples to faint and gradually dispel the pain. After a moment, Li Shu twisted his head and slowly got out of bed. Not bad, not bad. Better than anesthesia. She opened the door, and as soon as she stepped out, she noticed that there was something wrong with the feeling under her feet. She lowered her head and saw a tray on the ground, containing clothes. This can't be for her, can it? Li Shu's face twitched. It's obvious that it's for her. She lifted her feet slightly, her white reflective clothes bearing a footprint of size 37. No, who invented putting things like this? Li Shu took a deep breath and carried his clothes back. Step out the door again. Several people were standing scattered at the entrance of the courtyard. Li Shu saw a young man sitting on top of the feather bird sculpture in the courtyard at a glance. The young man was dressed in blue and white clothes, with black hair tied around his ears and tied together with a green and black headband to press down his long hair. His withered and yellow hair turned much darker, lazily and casually hanging behind him. My forehead is shattered and drooping, and my face is as white as paper. Li Shu couldn't believe it and said, Fu Shiwei. Is this a rebirth? The young man heard the sound and looked slightly sideways. Although he was young, his outline was clear and sharp, with deep and sharp eyebrows and eyes. Li Shu heard the senior brother in the middle boasting to Fu Shiwei, practicing qi is crucial. With such talent, junior brother has a bright future ahead. What? Li Shu's chin is almost falling off. Is this kid so curly? The people who were swept up were also in the same mood. They all started together, and they didn't know anything yet. This kid just practiced qi. I'm really frustrated after being trained. Everyone looked at Fu Shiwei with different thoughts, while the person involved had a naive expression and asked, Senior brother, do you think this is considered exceptional talent? Everyone. Show off. Show off. Senior brother smiled politely, but he had already cursed Fu Shiwei to the point of bloodshed in his heart. However, as an entry-level guidance senior brother, he certainly couldn't curse anyone anymore. He also smiled at him and said, "Junior brother, I'm afraid you may not know when you first entered the country. The most admirable 3 Dao Juns in our spirit entered the country 3 days ago and were unparalleled in swordsmanship. Can you tell me if you have exceptional talent?" So it seems that he has exceptional talent. Fu Shiwei smiled, his smile not reaching the bottom of his eyes. Amazing talent. This sentence is extremely talented. He waited for 2 lifetimes. Senior brother turned around and looked at the expressions of everyone, as if he understood something. He explained to everyone, "You all have cultivation tips in your room." Surprisingly, only one person discovered it. Everyone. Do you have it? How come they don't know? Of course there is. Senior brother smiled without answering. The crowd couldn't help but mutter, "Do you have it?" "I don't know." "You didn't notice either." "I didn't notice it." So how did he discover it? Li Shu took advantage of the crowd's discussions and couldn't help but quietly approach Fu Shiwei, saying in a voice that only 2 people could hear, "Is your painkiller still there?" Fu Shiwei glanced sideways at Li Shu, squinted his eyes and smiled, like a little bodhisattva. "What are you planning to do, sister? It looks like it's still there." "Don't worry about what you're doing, can you give it to me?" "He has been practicing and can't use the painkillers for a while." "Sure, but I want to eat meat tonight." Fu Shiwei glanced at the person ahead. Her first reaction was that she thought he was saying, "He wants to eat people. A sin is a sin." "No, no problem." Fu Shiwei hugged his chest and said, "I'll give it to you tonight." Li Shu made an "okay" gesture towards Fu Shiwei. Although Fu Shiwei didn't understand, he didn't ask further. This scene made a person around couldn't help but snort coldly. Ask yourself, if you don't speak it out, let everyone know and know. What kind of skill is hiding it? Li Shu and Fu Shiwei turned their heads simultaneously to look at the speaker. "What are you barking at in the dog?" The speaker was a girl of 17 or 18 years old, dressed in exquisite and luxurious attire. "What are you looking at? Is what I said wrong?" Everyone came in together. "What can't we know together?" The girl Ame raised her head slightly, her eyes full of intimidation. Li Shu smiled. "There are so many things that we can't know together. Why doesn't this sisters take out her purse and let everyone know how much money is in it? Knowing everything together will only harm you." Fu Shiwei stared with a smile on his face. The girl's face was warm and angry, and she sneered contemptuously, "You're so eloquent, you just don't know if they look up to you." She looked at Li Shu with nothing to hold on to. She really didn't want to give her a single glance. "Dalit. I'm not living this big to be looked up to," Li Shu sneered. "Isn't it just talking nonsense? Can she still lose?" Upon hearing these words, Fu Shiwei turned his head and stared at Li Shu, his eyes dark and unable to resist reflection. Poor and despicable. The girl was interrupted halfway through her words. "Sister, this is the spiritual realm. Let's not cause trouble." The girl next to the luxurious girl, who was bowing down, tried to persuade her not to cause trouble. Pop. Unexpectedly, the luxurious girl immediately slapped the girl next to her and said, "Who is your sister? Speak up." The girl was holding her face and sobbing, afraid to speak anymore. Senior brother Jiaoyin turned his head and said to the girl with a warm spring breeze, "Yuan, this is the spiritual realm, not the human realm. If you want to be a young lady, I can take you back." Yuan Ruowei glared at Fu Shiwei and Li Shu with some indignation and said, "Senior brother, it's not that I'm being angry. I just can't tolerate flattery from others, nor can I see others doing things secretly. If we all know that cultivation technique, today we can't determine who is in the realm of Qi cultivation. If you want to practice, practice together. What kind of skill do you secretly have? Ha! Teaching senior brother to droop his eyes, his masseter muscles moved. Do you think he has a good temper? Li Shu. I've seen gold on my face before. As she was about to speak, a pair of cool hands pressed down on him. Fu Shiwei took a step forward and smiled, saying, Sister, why don't you know the key to cultivation? Of course. Of course. Yuan Ruowei choked up, why didn't she notice? Is it because you're blind? You're just blind. Fu Shiwei laughed back and said, since this sister is not blind and the trick is so obvious, you can't see it. Fu Shiwei's innocent gaze seemed to say, so you're stupid. You scumbag. Sister was just blaming me for not telling you. Why, am I your father? I have to tell you everything. Fu Shiwei blinked innocently, without any smile in his eyes. Having experienced something twice is already annoying. You're reckless. Yuan Ruowei glared angrily at Fu Shiwei, raising her hand to slap him in the face. Having watched enough of the play, senior brother Dao promptly threw a restraining decision. Yuan Ruowei's hand hit her in mid-air and was suppressed by a force. When she regained consciousness, she was completely bound. Senior brother Jiao Yin walked up from among the crowd and said, Yuan Ruowei, take action to beat up your fellow disciples, provoke trouble, and punish Qingshuang Gorge for guarding the snow prison for half a month, as a warning to others. Snow prison. Everyone doesn't know why snow prison is. But it sounds quite cold at first glance. If anyone commits again in the future, the punishment will be doubled. The senior brother's slightly cold eyes scanned the crowd with a warning. Yes. You dare to punish me, my second uncle is a disciple personally passed down by Cui Zhurong. Yuan Ruowei was full of confidence, with a look of not showing any concern for her little mentor. In fact, you will find that this kind of character that ignites instantly and is raised aggressively is actually quite cute. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. This immortal, she suddenly can fix. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. This immortal, she suddenly can fix Li Shu. The niece of a disciple of a real person. She couldn't help but look at her senior brother, whose background sounded quite impressive. Senior brother, I wonder if you can be trusted. Just rely on it. I can't rely on them, they are cannon fodder. No, it's not them. It's her own. Fu Shiwei is already in the realm of refining qi. Only her, nothing cannon fodder. Fu Shiwei also looked at Jiaoyin's senior brother in a secluded manner, adding fuel to the fire. Senior brother, she seems to look down on you. Li Shu gave a thumbs up in his heart. People who criticize cows speak with their own fragrance. Teaching senior brother. I'm not deaf. He swung his sleeves, full of momentum. My name is Baiguei, the white Gui of ancient mythical beasts. Baigui's warm eyes were like March snowflakes. I punished you, so take my name and tell your uncle's master, Cui Zhurong, to go and ask his master for punishment. Take it away. Bai Yan gave a glance to the several junior brothers behind him, and the disciples understood and prepared to catch Yuan Ruowei. You dare. You dare. Just as Yuan Ruowei shouted a few words, her mouth was sealed by an immortal spell. It's so noisy. Bai Ting picked the Shuangyu Ling from his waist with his fingers. If I were a young disciple today, I'm afraid I would be bullied to the extreme by someone who has just started learning. Take it down. Yes, senior brother. Yuan Ruowei's mouth was blocked and she didn't know what to say. As everyone watched her being dragged down, they all took on a lot of responsibility. The girl who was beaten by her turned her gaze to the double-feathered ring hanging around by Guixin's waist, and looked up with some pleasure. My fellow martial brothers have just entered the mansion, please do not act like her, Bai Yan warned. Yes, senior brother Bai. By the way, I came here to tell everyone that the photo wall is not over yet. In the next 3 months, there will be an assessment of your disciples, and those who fail to bring their spirits into their bodies within 3 months will be sent to the outer mountain. With no good mood left, Bai Yan couldn't help but feel a little impatient. Li Shu heard someone gasping for breath, and she almost thought it was because she didn't control herself from making the sound. Now it seems that she is not the only one who feels a lot of pressure. But she is under more pressure than others. She wants to open a supermarket in modern times and also needs to provide 500 painkillers for the virtual supermarket in 10 days. Now she has an additional task of 3 months to bring her spirit into her body. She is just a stinky money maker. Why haven't you seen the money yet you've taken on a lot of tasks? She's like playing a game now, getting stuck in a side quest before the main one starts. There is no one in this world who is busier than her. She is simply a role model for working people. Li Shu felt lucky and raised his hand to speak, so. Senior brother Bai, what is it to be sent down to the outer mountain for? Bai Yan looked at Li Shu and raised his hand. He didn't quite understand the meaning of her gesture, but he respected it. However, for her question, he gave a very good question look. Wu Daojun recently had someone get a batch of cold water crocodiles in the lake at the foot of the mountain, and a batch of cannibal flowers were replaced in the nearby fields. He was worried that no one would take care of him. Hiss. Li Shu only felt that the gaps between his teeth were cold. Crocodiles, cannibalistic flowers. This 5 Dao Lord is truly a role model for our generation. This fairy, she can suddenly fix it. Senior brother, I'm hungry, I don't know where to eat. The only chubby guy covered his stomach and looked at Bai Ting. He is so hungry. You can eat a cow now. Bai Yan patted his head and said, oh, I almost forgot the most important thing. This group of birds has only just started and has not yet cleared the valley. The little chubby man looked incredulous. You can forget such an important thing. Rice. That's rice. How could you forget your meal? It's like this, the sword sect has not had a good haul for hundreds of years. Except for occasional small stoves in each mountain, everyone usually uses the Pigu Dan. When you first enter the mansion, you should issue 10 Pigu Dan, but I forgot to bring it with me when I came. Bai Gui is also a bit awkward. This is indeed his mistake. He has already passed the age of using Pigu Dan, and it is normal for him to forget. The little chubby man didn't have the Pigu Dan in his ear, he could only hear what was not eaten. Senior brother, then I'm not going to starve to death. No, don't worry. It takes at least 3 days for a person to starve to death. The chubby little man covered his stomach and was on the verge of death, saying, it won't take 3 days. If I don't eat a meal, I'll die. Bai Yan. Junior brother, don't die yet. I'll go back and get it for you right away. Li Shu raised his hand again and said, wait, senior brother, don't leave yet. There are only 10 Pigu pills, so should we buy them ourselves after we finish them? This is the most important thing. In principle, it's like this. Bai Yan nodded, but don't worry, you can go to Zhuye Lift to collect some tasks from various mountains and earn money. Li Shu. How many tasks does she have now? That's great. Someone clapped and praised her. She was a woman with her hair tied up, probably already married in the mortal world. The woman was full of fighting spirit at this moment. She was subjected to criticism from her husband's family in the mortal world. Her husband was not fond of her and lazy, always running to the brothel. Her son was also unfilial, and she was abandoned while fleeing the famine. By chance, she came here. There is no mother.in.law, no husband, no son here. She can cultivate immortality and earn money on her own, which was something she couldn't even imagine before. Also, senior brother Bai, where should I go if I buy pills? Li Shu raised his hand again. She felt that when she was in school, if she had done something shameless now, she would have asked why she couldn't get into college. Folding platform. Many danshio or other cultivators will sell a variety of items on the folding platform. If you need anything, you can go and buy it yourself. Bai Yan's smile was somewhat forced. Why so many questions? That. Li Shu was still preparing to ask. Unexpectedly, Bai Gui turned around as if he hadn't heard him. Okay, since everyone is clear, I'll go back and fetch the Pigu Dan for everyone first. Li Shu. White. Before the words could be spoken, Bai Gui slipped away. After a while, a young disciple was sent over to deliver the Pigu Dan. Li Shu Gang has obtained the Pigu Dan. New item on the purchase order. Pigu Dan. Don't come, don't come. Li Shu immediately threw the Pigu Dan with a bottle out. Like a hot potato. As soon as the woman walked over, Pigu Dan entered her arms. Subconsciously, she reached out to catch it and looked at Li Shu, who seemed to have seen a ghost. Miss, you don't want it, she said. Li Shu. She dare not take it. Suddenly, she had a wonderful attention. Well, big sister, can I exchange the Pigu pill for your pain-relieving pill? Before the woman could speak, someone interrupted. You can buy 10 pain-relieving pills for 1 Pigu pill. Are you sure you want to change it? Li Shu nodded and said, change, I'll exchange 1 Pigu pill for 6 pain-relieving pills. She went straight for a big sale. She doesn't need the Pigu pill, so naturally she doesn't need it. After all, this Pigu pill is a hot potato, so it's better to take it out and exchange it for a pain-relieving pill. That person looked at Li Shu like a fool. Perhaps. She is a person who is afraid of pain and would rather starve than suffer. He is truly a unique cultivator in the immortal realm. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. 9 Fan Mingyue 1-2 Gold. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Fan Mingyue 1-2 Gold. I'll trade with you. Before the elder sister could speak, someone rushed around Li Shu, afraid it might be too late to grab it. At present, Pigu Dan is much more useful than pain-relieving Dan. After only a moment, her bottle was empty, replaced by several bottles of painkillers in her hand. A total of 60. A little makes a lot, she has no right to despise. On the first day, almost 1/5 of the goal was achieved, which was a particularly good start. After putting the several Pigu Dan she had exchanged into her bottle, the elder sister said to Li Shu, Miss, I see that you have a good relationship with that young master. I would like to ask for your help. Knowing that she was referring to Fu Shiwei, Li Shu hurriedly said, Big sister, don't talk nonsense. We just met by chance, and we can get along well wherever we go. Fu Shiwei looks young, but in fact, he is young and mature. They seem to have a good relationship, but they are just casual acquaintances under the trade. I didn't know each other when I turned around. Fu Shiwei is not a good person. She doesn't need to owe him too much for the sake of a stranger. Is that right? The older sister looked at Fu Shiwei, who was alone and couldn't help but think. Didn't you just see that these two people have a good relationship? It seems like I don't know each other now. These young people are really strange now. Li Shu slipped back into the room holding his bottle of painkillers and collected them all into the virtual supermarket space. After finishing all of this, she finished breakfast and looked at the sky. It was still early to go to the so-called folding platform to take a look. Let's take a look at the price of pills. Let's see if there are any tasks for Dan Shio. It is impossible to obtain 500 painkillers within 10 days without any other means. She doesn't know what the consequences are if she can't do it yet. Are you really worried about people? When Li Shu left, the entire Disciples Academy was quiet, one by one unsure whether they were studying the introduction of spirits into their bodies in the room or going out. Li Shu summoned Xiaoyu to climb onto her back and said, Xiaoyu, do you know the folding platform? Go folding the platform. Xiaoyu didn't answer, so she stood up and waved her wings, flying high into the air with Li Shu. In the distant sky, the sun is rising towards the sky, and two large birds are walking side by side in the light scattered through the gaps in the clouds. Folding platform. On the flat top of the Green Mountain, there is a huge ginkgo tree that has been growing for thousands of years. Its branches grow like a crescent moon, and the lush yellow leaves cover the middle of the mountain with new clothes. Xia Yu fell to the ground and began to scatter, while Li Shu also fell steadily. A thick layer of fallen leaves fell on the ground, and Zexiantai was as big as several football fields. Many people were setting up stalls under the trees. Li Shu walked in and read line by line. The things on the stall were dazzling, including weapons, pearl hairpins, clothes, elixirs, lingzhi, unfamiliar flowers and plants, mushrooms, bones, and even living small animals. Li Shu stood in front of the spirit cat, her hands itching. The spirit cat grinned at her in place, but could not move. It seemed that she was bound by something. The animal dealer looked at the disciple in his eyes, devoid of any spiritual power, and knew that she was a new disciple who had just started. "Don't let me see this little junior sister, I'm all fierce spirit beasts. They look cute, but they're not something that little junior sister can control now. It's not too late for little junior sister to bring spirits into her body in the future." The animal dealer picked up his flying fairy token from his waist and lightly swiped it, a light flying into Li Shu's flying fairy token. Li Shu heard his own heavy cry. "What are you doing?" Li Shu was vigilant as he held on to his flying feather order, not knowing what he was doing. "How can you casually touch other people's birds? This is very impolite. Don't be afraid, junior sister. This is my contact information. I will naturally understand it when I bring spirits into my body in the future." The animal trafficker has an enigmatic expression on his face. Potential customers, he naturally cannot let go. Li Shu felt that she missed out on many things by not bringing her spirit into her body, but she had no evidence. Rookie has no right to question. Li Shu took off Chongming and put it in her arms before taking it out. She hasn't brought her spirit into her body yet, and she doesn't understand what others are doing to Chongming. It's too dangerous. This thing is as important as a student ID. She looked all the way and finally stopped at the small stalls selling pills. The stall owner was a woman in her 40s and 50s, dressed very plainly, like a woman who immediately went home to cook after selling something. The woman has a healthy skin color, curved eyebrows and eyes, and looks very friendly. Li Shu squatted beside her, looking at the pills on her stall. These pills are very strange and have strange shapes. Li Shu pointed to the flattened white ball in the middle and said, "Senior sister, is this a rabbit-shaped pill?" She looked more and more like a rabbit, like a little rabbit sleeping on its stomach. The woman was momentarily stunned at the words, then turned her gaze to the pill again. With her fingers resting on her chin, she began to ponder, "Junior sister, how did you tell this was a rabbit?" She is not contemplating the shape of the pill. She was wondering where this came from, the little junior sister with a bad eye. Surprisingly, this disguising pill could still be seen as unique by her. Li Shu didn't take it seriously. Instead, he picked up the pill from the rabbit brand, drew its outline with his nails, and handed it to the woman seriously. "Senior sister, look, isn't this a pair of jade rabbit sleeping spring pills? But it's just the Q version." The woman leaned back slightly and looked at Li Shu in shock. "Junior sister, you have outstanding vision." She didn't notice it anyway. Li Shu smiled shyly and said, "Thank you very much, senior sister. By the way, is senior sister Dan Shio? I don't know what the price of these pills is." The woman didn't answer her first question, just asked, "There are quite a few pills with different values, and it's a long story. It's better for junior sister to directly say what pill you want to buy." Li Shu. Pain-relieving pill. Woman. Junior sister has outstanding vision. You still need to buy painkillers. Li Shu looked expectant and said, "How much is it?" The woman said, "Probably 1 pearl, 5 minutes, and 5 or 6 bright moons." She's not quite sure either. She doesn't refine pills and doesn't take medicine. Nature doesn't know. Is the moon shining brightly in 5 minutes? Li Shu is puzzled. Another unclear knowledge point has been added. But this should be money. Okay, thank you very much, senior sister. Woman. No harm, no harm. She smiled and looked at Li Shu's back. Seeing her leave, she immediately sent a day's message to the Flying Immortal Order. Today at Zhiyu, I met a junior sister who boasted about Xiaoji's pill, which was like a jade rabbit sleeping in spring, and laughed at her disciple. After a while, she received several replies. Li Shu asked several more vendors and the prices he got were all different. Some people say that 1 pearl has 5 bright moons and 5 pieces. Some people say, 3 pearls per pearl. Some people say, 1. Li Shu realized that the pain-relieving pill couldn't even be called a price, and these people didn't understand and wanted to deceive her. Fortunately, she doesn't have money. But she also knew a little, what the bright moon is. Mingyue Ding is a coin in the realm of cultivation, known as Lingyu in the realm of cultivation. Therefore, it is round like a bright moon and has a clear and crisp sound, hence its name. Mingyue Ding is divided into 5 parts, 7 parts, and 9 parts, with different values. 1 pearl and 9 parts of Mingyue Ding can be worth 1 or 2 gold coins in the human world. End of this chapter. Chapter 10 Swordsmanship. Intense Internal Convolution. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Swordsmanship. Intense internal convolution. Li Shu also understood that even in the realm of cultivating immortals, if it were to deceive you, it would still be to deceive you, and even if it were to deceive you, there would be no law to recover justice. Buying here is not cost-effective, it's just that she doesn't have the money. Li Shu decided to take a different path. Who has the most pain-relieving pills? Everyone will tell you. Of course, it's a serious cultivation. Danxiu is the least lacking in elixirs. Li Shu is going to see if there are any commission tasks from Danxiu. The task entrusted by the platform folding is hanging directly below the ginkgo tree, floating in the air. Li Shu feels like guessing lantern riddles on Yuanshao, filled round balls made of glutinous rice. Flour for lantern festival, when he walks in. She looked up at the task above her head. She has watched many things, such as catching demons, offering reward elixirs, and forming groups to fight monsters. These are not things that she, as a rookie, can do. She looked at them one by one. Some tasks were picked by others before she knew them clearly, and some tasks disappeared halfway through. Finally, she found the internal mission entrusted by the sect in the furthest corner. Feed the fish, on the outer mountain, with 200 pearls and a bright moon. Upon seeing these words, Li Shu immediately remembered the crocodile mentioned by Bai Yan, and instinctively moved away from this task. Her intuition was that the seemingly simplest task was most likely to have hidden dangers. Otherwise, how could such a simple task still be here and have been picked away long ago? Li Shu was just about to look at the next one when he saw that the fish farming task had been taken away by someone. The newcomer is a familiar face. The girl who was bullied by Yuan Ruowei smiled slightly at the task in her hand, as if she had found a treasure. Li Shu couldn't help but call out to her, "Are you sure you want this task?" The girl only saw Li Shu and recognized her. She nodded and lowered her gaze, saying, "I've looked around, and this task is the simplest." "But since it's the simplest, why are you still here even after noon?" Li Shu said indirectly. "That's right, let's just say, is there a possibility that the fish could be crocodiles?" The girl blinked her eyes and stared at Li Shu, but she didn't know how to answer. Maybe everyone thinks there's less money. Okay, that's all for Li Shu. After all, She was not sure if the fish was actually a crocodile, and if not, she couldn't be sure if the woman would have thought too much. If so, she also reminded her. She is not a smart person herself, this is just her guess, and she doesn't need to use her own guess to influence the thoughts of others. The woman glanced at Li Shu's back and instinctively tightened her grip on the task, afraid that others might snatch it away. She didn't understand the purpose of what Li Shu said. Is Li Shu also interested in this task? She couldn't be sure, she just wanted to leave quickly. Li Shu took a few more steps and saw another task. This task was a new one that she had just completed when she ran into it head-on. The task comes from Chongming Peak. Picking mushrooms. 3 hours, 100 pearls, and a bright moon. Li Shu's eyes lit up. From the perspective of the duration of the task, it is suitable. Mushrooms, poisonous mushrooms. It's okay then. Li Shu was mentally prepared and immediately took off the task. The person next to him couldn't help but shake his head when he saw the situation. A disciple who has not yet brought his spirit into his body went to pick the mushroom. Torment. However, Li Shu naturally did not see it. Generally, tasks entrusted within a sect such as planting grass, flowers, and raising animals are released by Dan Xiu and Qi Xiu. Sword cultivators and others are all crazily embroiled, so they don't have time to deal with these idle matters. How much internal competition do they have? For example, at this moment, Fu Shiwei saw a layer of fog filling the canyon in front of him, unable to see ahead. The mountains and rocks are messy, without any beauty, but everywhere is filled with the aura of killing. As soon as Fu Shiwei stepped into this place, he was stopped by an invisible force. An elderly voice followed suit. Practicing Qi, this is the Wonderland Canyon. If you accidentally enter, leave quickly. The young man's ink hair flew high and said, I did not enter by mistake, I came here with determination. You have only entered the country after practicing Qi, so your tone may seem reckless. Wonderland Canyon, as the name suggests, has a realm of tens of thousands of trials, among which the danger is extremely high. This is not only the only testing ground of the immortal sect in the spirit, but also the place to ascend to the divine list. Every tester who passes through a realm will make a note on the 10,000 refinements list. The more realm they pass through, the higher they will be on the list. But the territory of Wonderland Canyon is updated year by year, and he can't remember how many territories there are and what they are. So far, the top spot on the Wonderland Canyon list is the Tongjing 13527 domain, ranking first. Young people should be reckless. Fu Shiwei smiled slightly, and the fierce wind blew his clothes and ink hair. He glanced lightly at the void, and a faint golden light broke through the clouds and poured down in the dim sky. The obstruction beneath his feet dissipated. He heard the voice say, "You go on your own. It's a god or a ghost, but it depends on your abilities." Fu Shiwei withdrew his gaze and without hesitation, stepped into the mist and disappeared. He has been a ghost before, it's not his turn this time. The disciples who were preparing to enter the region nearby felt that he had gone crazy when they saw him enter the Wonderland Gorge, who had just completed one level of Qi cultivation. Hey, this is a new disciple, isn't it? He's a new disciple who dares to come to Wonderland Canyon. He must be crazy. This kid is like a newborn calf who is not afraid of tigers. He dares to come and test his Qi level just by practicing it. He's afraid that he may have a chance to enter but not return. I haven't even learned from my master yet. I'm afraid even if I haven't touched any weapons, I dare to venture into the Wonderland Canyon. Isn't that right? Young people nowadays are too restless and don't know the superiority of heaven and earth. Hey, let's go, let's go. A clear river, inlaid like a jade belt at the foot of the mountain, with vast and magnificent terraced fields stretching like a belt. It climbs half the mountain layer by layer from the fertile and flat land, and from a distance, it looks like a colorful fairy axis. Xia Yu and Li Shu fell to the edge of the mushroom field, which seem to be covered with a layer of foam. The foam circle floats quietly with the wind, and the waves are bright and colorful. Li Shu went forward and poked the foam ring with his hand. His soft fingers could easily pierce it, but they could not break it. She loosened her finger and the foam ring bounced back with a sound of "bow." Li Shu was about to touch when a kind old man's voice came in. "Little girl, don't touch me randomly." Li Shu turned around and saw an old man with white hair, dressed in linen clothes but carrying a hoe. The old man stood behind her with a kind expression, smiling and staring at her. "Are you here to pick mushrooms?" Li Shu nodded and handed the commission to the old man, saying, "Is Grandpa the owner of this field?" The old man put down his hoe and took the entrusted sticker. After glancing at it, he waved it away and nodded at Li Shu. "That's true. You are a new disciple who has not yet brought your spirit into your body. This is not an easy task for you." The old man saw at a glance that Li Shu had no spiritual power. She is a new disciple, so she is ready to talk to her carefully. Sword cultivation, spear cultivation, sword cultivation, hammer cultivation, whip cultivation, arrow cultivation will all be available, but currently, due to mainstream sword cultivation, other cultivators are not visible, but this situation is likely to change in the future. There are also auxiliary or dharma practices such as Dan Shio, Qi Shio, and Mantra Law Shio. Dharma practitioners will also have powerful perverts, and they will write about them later. Overall, the combat effectiveness of these weapons of destruction majors is very strong and generally combative, so the male lead will be the ceiling of combat effectiveness and a cultivation maniac. End of this chapter.